Wow, it's my honor to be here. Thank you so much. It's just really exciting. Maybe just a little biography, like who the heck am I, right? I got involved in the pro-life movement in 1976 when I was 23 years old. So now I know everyone's doing the math. I have some explanations as to why very quickly I was attracted to what may be referred to as the activist end of the pro-life movement. I think part of it is just my personality. I'm an Italian, and I'm very impatient, and I don't like to wait around to see results. So that's one reason. I think the other reason may be, and I think there's something to this, just in a universal aspect. I think it matters who you meet early on in your life, when you're young and you're still malleable. And in 1977, I met Joseph Scheidler of the Pro-Life Action League. And I was 24 years old then. He was in his 50s, and Joe is now in his 90s. So we really ran the gamut there in terms of a spectrum of the movement. But I have to say that Joe Scheidler is pretty much single-handedly responsible for my life of crime. 1986, I moved to Milwaukee to study for my PhD, to attend Marquette University, so I was hanging out with the Jesuits. And Edmund and I met getting arrested together, my husband. And nothing says I love you like a pair of handcuffs. So, and I found the key to a very happy marriage. Marry somebody who's willing to get arrested with you. So he and I are still up to here active in pro-life work. There are some handouts. Let me just draw your attention to them. Respect for life is the preeminent political issue. This is also available on our website if you want to download the flyer, which is prolifesociety.com. Easy enough, no hyphens, prolifesociety.com. Also, I'm involved with the Red Rose Rescue, and the cards are being distributed for that. Red Rose Rescue is having a conference at the end of April in St. Louis. And so if you wanted to learn more about that, you could go to Red Rose Rescue, all very simple, redroserescue.com. If some of you want to take notes during my speech, I'm going to be referring to a number of documents. And yes, I'm going to be talking about the documents mostly from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. But if some of you are not Catholic, it doesn't matter, because what I'm going to say really, this is not religion specific, but the United States Catholic Conference definitely has issued very important documents on the very issue that I am going to be talking about today. Why abortion is the preeminent social political issue. Even after 46, 47 years going on, 47 years with legalized abortion, we are still having this debate. And I want to give you reasons in order to articulate and defend how it is that abortion is the preeminent political social issue. And I have to be honest with you there. In my opinion, it's a total no-brainer, okay? But nonetheless, the debate, sadly, is still with us. So if you want to take notes, that might be helpful. I'm going to also be referring to some documents from John Paul II, in particular Evangelium Vitae, his encyclical. I'm going to start this with a quotation, so I want you to pay attention to this quote. Here's the quote. "It is not Catholic that abortion is the preeminent issue that we face as a world in Catholic social teaching. It is not." Now, that was uttered by the Bishop of San Diego just last November at the bishops' meeting in Baltimore, Bishop Robert McElroy. Why would he make such a statement? This was during a heated debate during the bishops' meeting on this very subject of abortion as a political issue. And it's kind of, what's the word I want exactly, but remarkable that he could feel so emboldened to make such a statement, to come right, stand up among his brother bishops and make such a statement so boldly declaring it. So there was a certain level of, shall we say, psychological, certainly, confidence in his being able to say such a thing. He made it when there was a debate regarding amendments. So here's one of the important documents you want to keep in mind. The document that came out from the bishops in 2015, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. And that document actually says that, and here's a direct quote from that document, Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, "Abortion remains our preeminent priority." So debate was stirred about those very words. Abortion remains our preeminent priority. And Cardinal Blaise Cupich of Chicago got the conversation going. What did Cardinal Cupich want? Okay, well, ideally he wanted those words removed. But he says, here's what he proposed. He proposed that paragraph 101 of Pope Francis's encyclical Gaudete et Exsultate be inserted into Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. So let me read to you Francis's quote, his paragraph 101 from his encyclical that Cupich wanted put in the bishop's document. So here's the paragraph. "The other harmful ideological error is found in those who find suspect the social engagement of others, seeing it as superficial, worldly, secular, materialist, communist, or populist. Or they relativize it as if there are other more important matters, or the only thing that counts is one particular ethical issue or cause that they themselves defend. Our defense of the innocent unborn, for example, needs to be clear, firm, and passionate. For at stake is the dignity of a human life, which is always sacred and demands love for each person, regardless of his or her stage of development." In some ways, so far, so good. But then the next sentence this is the one that Cupich really wanted. "Equally sacred," there's the magic words, right? "Equally sacred, however, are the lives of the poor, those already born, the destitute, the abandoned, and the underprivileged, the vulnerable, infirm, and elderly exposed to covert euthanasia, the victims of human trafficking, new forms of slavery, and every form of rejection." So, quite a long list. Equally sacred. So Cupich wants this paragraph dropped into the Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, and McElroy, the bishop from San Diego, came to his defense. Okay. calling, saying we have to be faithful to the Francis magisterium. Okay. This was all put to a vote, and there were over 200 bishops present at this meeting. The vote was 143 to 69. 143 rejecting the paragraph from Francis, 69 bishops voting in favor of it. Okay, applause, yes. Maybe, wipe your brow and say, wow, maybe we dodged the bullet. Because, note this, that almost 1/3 of the bishops voted to amend forming consciences for faithful citizenship. That's a lot of bishops. So it wasn't as if Supich and McElroy were outliers, okay? They had support. What is it, again, and going back to forming consciences for faithful citizenship, it says that the threat of abortion remains our preeminent priority because it directly attacks life itself, because it takes place within the sanctuary of the family, and because of the number of lives destroyed. So they've given you 3 reasons there, right? At the same time, let's just be, honest. Are there other injustices in the world? Of course. Are there other seriously grave injustices? Yes. So certainly, every person of goodwill, Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, I don't care what you are, you need to be sensitive to the injustices that are happening against other peoples. Absolutely. So we got to get that out there. That is important. Because then, of course, the document forming consciences for faithful citizenship, it goes on to say, at the same time, we cannot dismiss or ignore other serious threats to human life and dignity, such as racism, environmental crisis, poverty, and the death penalty. But still in all, while it acknowledges that there are these other social justice issues that we need to be sensitive about, abortion remains our preeminent priority. You gotta, maybe get a tattoo, right? Right, okay, so, all right. Another document that came out from the bishops is Living the Gospel of Life. So you might want to make a note about that. Article number 22. That article in Living the Gospel of Life also says that abortion is the preeminent issue because it is intrinsically evil. It's an intrinsically evil action, and, quote, must always be rejected and opposed and must never be supported or condoned, unquote. Did Joe Biden read this document, by the way? Maybe we should send it to Nancy, because they still don't get it. And this isn't the Pope, these are the bishops, right? The bishops even identify the right to life, quote, this is Living the Gospel of Life, as the most fundamental human good and the condition for all other human goods, unquote. Now, Article 28 of faithful citizenship, within the context of abortion, explicitly denies that all social justice issues have equal weight. Let me repeat that. Faithful citizenship explicitly denies that all social justice issues have equal weight and notes 2 mistaken approaches to evaluating those issues, especially when you're going to go into the voting booth. The first, okay, so what are these 2 mistaken approaches? The first is a moral equivalence that makes no ethical distinctions between different kinds of issues involving human life and dignity. The direct and intentional destruction of innocent human life from the moment of conception until natural death is always wrong and is not just one issue among many. It must always be opposed. Article number 29 the bishops do caution against the misuse of these necessary moral distinctions as a way of dismissing or ignoring other serious threats to life and dignity. In other words, it is wrong to act, as I've already said, as if no other social justice issues existed. That would be very myopic and would be wrong. Besides which, a lot of these issues, frankly, are interconnected. You know, they don't exist individualistically, side by side. Literally, there is a fabric of the social moral order. Okay, so we get that. Footnote number 3 in Faithful Citizenship. This is very instructive. There's a footnote number 3. Footnote number 3 refers to a document that came out of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith when Ratzinger, Joseph Ratzinger, who later on, of course, became Benedict XVI, was the prefect of that office. And you guys should read it. It's a short document, but wow, is it powerful. It's simply called the Doctrinal Note. Okay, it's no fancy title, right? The Doctrinal Note. And so it came out in 2002, and the note directly addressed the problem of the Christian Catholic politician that lives two parallel lives, right? The parallel lives. Those politicians, we all know sadly who they are, who live their lives, spiritual life over here, and my political decisions are over here, and they don't intersect. This document was put out specifically to correct that moral incoherency. I like that jargon. They're morally incoherent, right? Okay, because let's probe that a little bit. Okay, let's just give these politicians like the Bidens and the Pelosi's and the Durbins and whatever. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't believe this, but okay, benefit of the doubt. That they really, in their heart, they believe abortion is wrong. Okay? Why are they morally incoherent? It's because and that's what they say, by the way, my church teaches, and I believe in the teachings of my church, blah, blah, right? But then, so that's their Sunday position, and then they have a different position on Monday. And then when they get into Congress, they vote against bills that would actually save babies that are born alive from abortion. Moral incoherency. And here's the other thing. They are acting contrary. What are they really doing? They're actually voting for what they personally believe is murder. They're supporting it. They have no integrity. On something so important, they are personally divided. How can you even begin to vote for somebody like that? I don't care if it could be any other issue. You would never allow that to happen. But somehow or another, there is the escape hatch when it comes to the issue of abortion. And they've got everybody out, who's going to vote for them completely bamboozled on it. This is a huge, incredible problem. Abortion is the preeminent social justice issue because the protection of human life presents fundamental and inalienable ethical demands in a way other, even very grave moral evils do not. So what is at stake is the essence of the moral law, and that's the document Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. Now, the claim that abortion is the preeminent social justice issue stands on plenty of doctrinal solid ground. You can even go back to, this is absolutely remarkable, really, the Second Vatican Council, issued 16 documents this is 1960s, 1962 to 65. Some of you were actually alive at the time. Some of you are too young, okay? But the Second Vatican Council issued the Pastoral Constitution on the Church, Gaudium et Spes. And note the language. Gaudium et Spes, the Vatican II document, says, therefore, from the moment of conception, life must be guarded with the greatest care, while abortion and infanticide are unspeakable crimes. You can ransack all of the Vatican documents. You will not find such strong language about any other kind of serious injustice, an unspeakable crime. Such severe language is reserved for this particular injustice. That is incredibly important. Then you can go over to article number 62 of John Paul II's great encyclical, Evangelium Vitae, the Gospel of Life. John Paul II went so far as to declare that the Church's condemnation of abortion is an infallible teaching. Now you gotta know how popes, you gotta be clued into the Pope speak, right? Because he uses very specific, deliberate language in order to signal that this is an infallible teaching, the Church's condemnation of abortion. What did he say? Article number 62. Therefore, by the authority which Christ conferred upon Peter and his successors, in communion with the bishops, there it is, that's Pope speak, by the authority which Christ conferred upon Peter and his successors, in communion with the bishops, who on various occasions have condemned abortion, and who, in the aforementioned consultation, albeit dispersed throughout the world, have shown unanimous agreement concerning this doctrine, I declare, Pope speak, I declare, that direct abortion, that is, abortion willed as an end or as a means, always constitutes a grave moral disorder, since it is the deliberate killing of an innocent human being. That is Catholic teaching, and it's infallible. No other serious injustice except for euthanasia has received such a solemn declaration. We should also consider John Paul II's teaching in an apostolic instruction in Latin, Christi Fidelis Laci. It's on actually the role of the laity in the church. Here's what he says. The inviolability of the person, which is a reflection of the absolute inviolability of God, finds its primary and fundamental expression in the inviolability of human life. Above all, the common outcry which is justly made on behalf of human rights, for example, the right to health, to home, to work, to family, to culture, is false and illusory if the right to life, the most basic and fundamental right and condition of all other personal rights, is not defended with maximum determination. Article number 38. That's incredible. That is, I'm okay. You can, like I said, the documents are there. The language is clear. The teaching is not, it's completely unambiguous. The injustice of abortion is the preeminent social political issue because the right to life, so violated in abortion, is the condition for all other rights. And in this, we need no other argument. In 1998, the bishops at the end of that year's November meeting issued a pastoral letter, which I already indicated, Living the Gospel of Life. Now, it did pay homage, shall I say, to the consistent ethic of life approach to social justice issues, yet the document admonishes, it does admonish that abortion and euthanasia does not excuse indifference to those who suffer from poverty, violence, and injustice. Any politics of human life must work to resist the violence of war and the scandal of capital punishment. Any politics of human dignity must seriously address issues of racism, poverty, hunger, unemployment, education, housing, and health care. However, the bishops go on to say, but I love this, by the way. So yeah, we got to pay attention to all those other social justice issues. However, quote, but being right in such matters can never excuse a wrong choice regarding direct attacks on innocent human life. Indeed, the failure to protect and defend life in its most vulnerable stages renders suspect any claims to the rightness of positions in other matters affecting the poorest and least powerful of the human community. Renders suspect. So that means all those pro-abortion politicians are all in favor, the poor and immigration and education, and are basically this document saying, don't trust them. They're disingenuous. They're being right when it comes to these other social issues is rendered suspect. That's the bishops are saying that. Okay, that's not you saying it or me, it's them. Maybe somebody should show this to Biden, but anyway. And if anyone has any doubt that abortion is reaffirmed as having priority in the hierarchy of social justice concerns, the bishops go on to say, quote, if we understand the human person as the temple of the Holy Spirit, the living house of God, then these latter issues fall logically into place as the cross beams, okay? In other words, holding up the roof and the walls of the house. All direct attacks on innocent human life, such as abortion and euthanasia, however, strike at the house's what? Foundation. These directly and immediately violate the human person's most fundamental right, the right to life. Neglect of these issues is the equivalent of building our house on sand. Such attacks cannot help but lull the social conscience in ways ultimately destructive of other human rights. As Pope John Paul II reminds us, the command never to kill establishes a minimum, the minimum, right? Which we must respect and from which we must start out in order to say yes over and over again, a yes which will gradually embrace the entire horizon of the good. The right to life here, again, is characterized as the most fundamental of all human rights. Now, look, I could stand up here and quote documents all day long, but we need to cut to the chase. When it comes to abortion, the first thing to be considered as to why it is the preeminent social political issue is the horrific body count. Absolutely no other grave injustice in America, I might even say the world, has claimed as many lives. In the United States, over 60 million human beings have been put to death since 1973. No other group of people perishes at the rate of 3,000 a day, as do the unborn. Moreover, no other group, even those who are victimized and oppressed, are formally declared by law to be non-persons. Only the unborn have been systematically and legally cast out of the human family. For the purposes of their right to life, the unborn are reduced to the level of a thing. Worse than a thing, they're reduced to garbage. Their bodies treated as so much waste or simply sold for scientific research. The unborn are the most oppressed group in America. Their oppression should shake us to the core. These are the only totally innocent persons subjected to violent obliteration, protected by law. The injustice of abortion is staggering. And for all the foregoing reasons, even if the bishops never said so, I don't need the bishops to say so in order for it to be the case. Abortion is the preeminent political social justice priority. Thus, it is incumbent on the shepherds of the church to guide the conscience of the Catholic voter, and I would say, frankly, anyone of goodwill, to first take the injustice of abortion into account when you are selecting your public officials. Let's go back to Pope Francis for a moment, because it does look like, perhaps initially, superficially, that Supich had some ground to stand on. When the Pope equated other injustices and the people groups, I should say, the people groups that are affected by other injustices as equal, okay? Frankly, that's true. That is not a false statement that the Pope made, but here's the difference. So if I'm going to give you an argument as to how to argue the difference, here it is. Certainly, we would want to recognize that every human being on earth is equal, and any injustice that affects other people groups needs to be opposed because everyone is sacred and equal in the eyes of God. But here's the difference. Just because everyone is equal and all life issues are equally sacred doesn't mean that they are equally urgent. And that's the difference. For instance, let me give you an analogy. Every child in the family is equal, equally sacred. But the fact is, and some of you may have personal experience with this, one child in that family may need extra attention, may need extra care, extra resources. If the child is ill, handicapped, mentally troubled, disturbed, acting out, then you know that care is going to be given immediately to that child. The extra swift attention spent on that child, however, in no way indicates that the lives of the other children are less precious, but that's the way it works. And that's why, equally sacred, but not equally urgent. No other people group is going to perish today in America at the rate of 3,000. Not one. I think we have, in terms of, well, why is it then that, people, I suppose it's okay to say that's at this conference, are going to wind up voting for the Democrats? Okay, so let's get political. We're talking political issue. I think they have an identity problem. I don't know, I've talked to several Catholics, including the present president of my former university, Madonna, who votes Democrat. And why? What is his excuse, his reason, his rationale, and so on? Agreeing abortion is wrong. First of all, they don't like the Republicans. And they have a personal identity problem. They cannot and will not associate with a party and people that are associated with that party, Republicans, because they do not want to be tagged with being conservative. They find it repugnant and odious. They don't want that identity. So they make up reasons why it's okay to vote for the other party, the party of death. And I have heard them say, well, the social programs that the Democrats support decrease. What I want to do, and this is practically a direct quote, I want to decrease the number of abortions. And they think the Democrats are doing that. Okay. And so they make up an excuse. The social programs will decrease the number of babies that are put to death in abortion. There's my reason. And so my conscience is salved, right? Wrong. And here's the reason why it's wrong. I don't care whether it's a Republican or a Democrat thing here, it's wrong. You still got a huge problem. Even if it even could be imagined that under the law of Roe v. Wade, no babies died, no babies were put to death. As long as there is a law that says they're non-persons and disenfranchised from the human race, you still got a problem, and if your candidate is supporting that candidate cannot have your vote, even if not one single unborn child dies as a consequence of that law. So there's my argument about that. You still got a social justice problem on your hands. It's wrong, it's evil, it's immoral, it's a sin, everything, to support a law that says a certain a sector of the human family are reduced to non-person status. Your social justice platform is you're standing on water. It's not there. It's air. There's nothing there. And that's what we have to call them to. I know I am about ready to run out of the time, but maybe we could go ahead and show this video. We'll have a few minutes for Q&A, and I'll conclude my speech. I want to make one last point about what is our problem as a pro-life movement before we can get to maybe a few minutes of Q&A. So I think all I got to do is press the go button. Okay. All right. So.
Show me
Okay, just one last thought. Our struggle as pro-lifers, we face a problem that other social justice activists don't have. Our victim group is hidden and really, really, really tiny. How tiny? I've taken aborted babies out of trash dumpsters and so on, and obviously we, prepared for their burials and so on. It's amazing. We have found aborted babies so small, but obviously very human, that from the shoulder to the fingertip, the severed arm would fit on the face of Roosevelt on a dime. That's how small. So we have to expose. We have to make the victims real for people. The unborn cannot march in the street, they cannot demonstrate, they can't riot, they can't vote, they can't speak, they can't write letters to the editor. You are the ones. And don't let anything restrict you. We are not going to end abortion without making real, serious personal sacrifices. Radical acts of love. That's what we got to have. Radical acts of love. So I know we have maybe just a few minutes for Q&A. I do have my books. Let me put a shameless plug in for my book, Abandoned, The Untold Story of the Abortion Wars. We do talk about a lot of things in that book, including the retrieval of these babies. I'm happy to sign it for you. I think they're selling the book for $15. And then if I sign it, it'll be worth $15.50. So, but thank you and God bless you all.
Dr. Miller, that's the countdown to your talking. So you have that's 10 minutes. Okay? So at this point, we have time for your questions, which I will read, and Dr. Miller will answer. We have a new wrinkle today. If we don't have time for your questions, and I don't think we will, there are an awful lot of questions, I will pass them on to Dr. Miller. I don't know if Dr. Miller knows this yet or not, because I learned it right before the talk. I will pass them on to Dr. Miller so that she can answer them, and the answers are posted to our Bringing America Back to Life website. So that's a very new wrinkle. Really cool. So, which gives you more work. Okay. And then after this Q&A, I will have some important announcements, so please stay seated after the Q&A. First question. Do you think it's appropriate for a priest to ask that a voter who helps put into office anyone who would vote for murder should not present themselves for Holy Communion? Should this be stated at or before Mass?
Well, right away I get the hard question. So maybe just let me read it again so I make sure I see what's. Do you think it's appropriate for a priest to ask that a voter who helps put into office anyone who would vote for murder should not present themselves for Holy Communion? Well, first of all, I think it would be appropriate. Okay. Whether it would be the most pastorally, pastoral thing to do, that's where it gets a little tricky, only because, and I know this is going to sound like, well, where are you going with this, Dr. Miller, but we don't, unless you know that they voted for that person because they were pro-abortion. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Ratzinger, I don't remember when it would have been, I'm going to say in the early part of this century, answered a question. It's up, and it's probably available on the internet. And the person who asked the question was Theodore McGarrick. When Theodore McGarrick was the Bishop of Washington, D.C., specifically on could a Catholic vote for a pro-abortion politician? And Ratzinger answered the question by saying, if that person voted for the candidate because they were pro-abortion, then that is sinful. But then he went on to say, if the candidate voted for, and this is where the tricky part comes in, voted for the candidate based on other issues that were proportionate to the crime and the evil of abortion, then it could be justified. But there's the problem. What social justice issue outweighs the murder of 3,000 people per day? So I do think that there needs to be serious catechesis from the pulpit in churches about this specific issue.
Dr. Miller, I have my own questions, just clarification. You've mentioned now a couple times that the abortion rate is about 3,000 a day. Am I right in thinking that you mean surgical abortions, and that excludes pharmaceutical abortions, right?
That answer would be correct. I mean, we don't really know when women are using the pill, when it may ever act as an abortifacient, the morning after pill. Yes, so the body count is higher than the 60 million, true enough.
What do you think of the bishop who told his priests not to vote in the primary? Are you familiar with that?
No.
Okay, and I'll clarify that.
Yeah.
I'm a little familiar with that story. The bishop's point was, if a priest votes in a primary, anybody in the world can know what political party they belong to. So the bishop wasn't telling priests not to vote in a general election. He was simply pointing out in a primary it wouldn't be a good idea, and I forget what diocese this was, but in a primary it would be good for a priest not to reveal to the world his membership in a political party. So what do you think of that?
Well, here we go. That would be true if he voted for the Democrats. No, I'm sorry, but I think it would send confusion. It would be scandalous. It would give people who have a weaker conscience an excuse. So Father so-and-so, who is a great priest, and I respect him, he voted for the Democrats. But yeah, then again, there are a few pro-life Democrats. A few. But maybe in that regard, I could kind of see where it was a bishop.
Yes.
I could kind of see where that could be a problem. So maybe I'll give that bishop some wiggle room in terms of that. I mean, maybe he was afraid that they would see that all these priests are voting for the Republicans, but okay. Oh my gosh, what a quandary we are in, right? But there it is.
Maybe I'll point out to everybody, too, I'm thinking of Dr. Miller's previous answer. If anybody wants to search for that document written by then Cardinal Ratzinger to then Archbishop McCarrick, before he became Mr. McCarrick, look for memorandum on the worthiness to receive Holy Communion.
Yeah, on the worthiness to receive, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Okay. So another question. The ultimate authority of determining right and wrong is God and his inspired word. In a society that has largely rejected the authority of God, how do we best make the case that abortion is evil and the preeminent evil of our time?
Well, I do think we have to appeal, God is not in charge, right? Well, first of all, I'm not so eager to let go of pointing out that God's in charge. Even in a culture that is becoming ever so secular, right? I don't think you should give up so easily on that. But let's assume for the sake of argument that God is not in the picture. Then you certainly do have to appeal to the sense of human fairness. That if you want your right to life to be respected, then you have to respect the lives of others, including the unborn. And one of the things that I do like to, arguments that I like to use that may be considered secular arguments, but I think, in fact, I wrote an article about it. It's in an anthology book, but of different pro-life. Each chapter is a different subject, and my article was the preborn and prejudice. And I argue that abortion is based on a kind of prejudice. Oh, and what are the two foundations for prejudice? Ignorance and fear. We are ignorant about the unborn, and we are afraid of them. We are afraid of the responsibility that the unborn child represents to us, and in particular the mother going into the abortion clinic. She is afraid of that baby. And that's why, and then they make all the excuses, but it's okay to kill because not human, less human, the dehumanization of this particular people group. So I want to appeal to, I don't want to be prejudiced. Well, you are prejudiced. And then I argue also, what do we really want to do as a culture? Do we want to limit the sphere of human rights, or do we want to expand them? We want to expand them. And what you're doing is you're closing off human rights to a particular group. And by the way, abortion is violence. So what you're doing is actually promoting a form of violence. So those are arguments that you can use. Those are really, really pretty weighty arguments. If they don't get that, then they're lost. They just want abortion. They want it, they will justify it, and nothing you say to them is going to change their minds. But those are some of the arguments that I would point to. Look at this, that actress, in fact, I forget her name, but during the Golden Globes, Michelle Williams touted, in fact, I got the exact quote. Here it is. We need to wrap up. Oh, well, if you want to talk to me later, but, how is it that in order for a woman to be free, she has to kill something? Okay, even if you don't want to say it's a baby, it's a human being, you actually have to kill something in order to be liberated. There must be something wrong with your biology. And is that that's what you're saying? Is that what you want to say about yourself as females, as women? No, of course not. So, is that it?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is. Thank you.